All right, everyone. It is 6 o'clock Central. I'm Craig Cooley. I'm the EMS Interest Group Chair for this year and the Fellowship Director down in San Antonio. Looking really forward to this, and I want to thank Mike Flippo for all of his hard work with this as well as our board liaison. So what we're going to do, and just so everybody's aware, we are recording this, so we can't badmouth our programs too much. Now we're recording this, so we just want to make sure everybody's aware of that, and then this will be available obviously for other folks to view later on. I know I've had some feedback for some folks from different programs, faculty reach out to me, so I'm going to just sort of start and somebody speak up. And if you're here representing one of the programs as faculty, just give us a quick who you are and where you're from, and then a couple minutes we'll get started with questions and stuff. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Bridget Swanserick, WashU EMS in St. Louis.
Excellent. Good evening.
Hey, this is Jeremiah Escajeda from Metro Health in Cleveland.
James Lee, watch you in St. Louis, APD, work with Bridget.
Esther Wong, Emory University.
Navin Arbakai, Rutgers Health, RWJ Barnabas in Newark, New Jersey.
Excellent. Anybody else faculty wise? Okay, sorry, somebody's looking to get in, so I'm sending them some info. Okay. All right. And then I assume everyone else on the call are either residents or students. I would assume hopefully interested in EMS, or at least curious about it. Anybody not fit that category that wants to speak up? All right. So we'll start. I know some people sent some, and you can certainly put some stuff in the chat as well if you come up with questions as we're going along. And I'm trying to track that, and I know a couple of other folks are as well. And so if anyone had come up with other questions, we have a few questions that got sent in. So I think for efficiency's sake, I'll start with those, and we will go from there. And I'll just kind of, from any of these questions, I think any of the programs, feel free to speak up, because I think the answers for most of these will probably be pretty similar for almost all of us. But we'll see how things go. All right. First thing, just by order of how it's on my email. Somebody was asking if there's any preference toward applicants right after graduating residency, or is it okay to take some time off, i.e. a year before applying? Who wants to tackle that first?
I can start with that one. We've had people who are right out of residency and people who have been in practice. But what I can tell you is that it's very difficult to go back to fellowship once you've been working as an attending. And not just for you yourself, but your family, your lifestyle, everything else. It's not conducive. So I feel like the programs are fine if you take time off. I don't know if you'll be fine taking time off.
Yeah, I would echo that. I tend to make the point to folks, anybody who asks me that question, it's very difficult to go back, because unlike in the old days, I think are old enough that probably most residents don't have that reference, but we're all beholden by the ACGME, the ACGME work rules, and our salary scale is probably all pretty close to each other. That's certainly not what you're going to probably make in the real world, as they say. Now, that being said, I've had one of our fellows a couple of years ago did come back after being in the community a few years. I know they worked specifically with their group and got sort of support from their group to help with the bigger picture and how that looked from a financial standpoint. But we don't mind, but I think it'll be tricky for most folks. That being said, if you end up out a few years and change your mind, we're always welcome to talk, but it will probably be a little bit of a financial hit.
Same. We also do not have a preference whether you come out right at residency versus practice as an attending and decide later that you want to do EMS. I do want to point out that the grandfathering in process for board certification no longer exists. So that's something to take into consideration if you have the EMS bug and really want to pursue it and become board certified in it.
Any other thoughts on that one? I think that's probably what most of us are thinking. All right. Next question we got is when to start thinking about fellowship before the match deadline. No. Who wants to take that one?
I can start. So, hey everyone, Jared Escajeda again. So Metro Health Cleveland. I trained at Pitt, and I think I'm probably the only fellow, I think, as far as I know, who previously was not an EMT, a paramedic prior to residency. So I think, if you look across the board, the vast majority of us have some sort of EMS experience prior to residency. That does not necessarily mean that, you're not qualified to be an EMS fellow if you don't have any previous EMS experience prior to residency. The reason why I mention that is because, some people go into EM residency knowing that they love EMS, they've always been in EMS, and they're going to continue to do EMS things and do an EMS fellowship. Obviously, earlier in your residency, the better. But I'd say at least end of second year for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And like we've had fellows who have tons of experience and minimal experience, and we train them to be great EMS physicians. From when to think about it, I think you should have some curiosity, but you don't necessarily have to commit until probably about halfway through your training. But then, especially once you're thinking about it seriously, getting some experience doing their EMS rotations, electives can be beneficial. While at the same time, like for myself, I came into, when I went to residency, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do EMS, and then I caught the med ed bug for a little bit, and ultimately found my way in doing kind of focusing on education within EMS, and came back to EMS ultimately. So your interest may morph and change, and I think you can kind of have a more directed interest and more specific niche that you're looking for within their specialty.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and it's interesting if you watch over the years, there's some generations of us that often carry the MPHs and some other things, because back when fellowships weren't accredited, it was sort of a validation of everything. I enjoyed my time as my MPH, although it made me angry at the healthcare system ever since. So maybe I should have skipped out on that. But there's definitely also a change, and I think you don't need to be worried about having prior EMS experience. Yes, a lot of us came out of that world. Some did it for years. I did it just a little bit as I got into college and before med school, and others barely got started. But some of the best fellows I've had no EMS experience whatsoever. The more EMS experience a fellow comes with me is the more I have to unlearn them and then re-teach them, versus the ones that have no experience. We just start from scratch, and it's can be a steep learning curve. So I don't think that should be a problem. But the interest part, yeah, you probably it should be an itch or a curiosity of some kind. Probably by the time you're kind of getting into second year, only from a logistic standpoint that, we're rapidly approaching interview season, and the fellowship match is obviously in typically early November. So there's a little bit of a logistics there as well. What other, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I also just wanted to add really quickly, for anybody who's in a program that doesn't have an EMS fellowship program or something that's like directly integrated inside your hospital, it's not the end of the world. I came from a residency that didn't have a formal EMS program, and I actually went out and sourced out a lot of really great resources in the community within like the fire systems that we had, and actually the neighboring city where they had a great EMS fellowship program. So there's a lot of opportunities for you to look for them if you don't have them directly in your hospital. Your community is going to love you if you come in and just ask them, hey, what can I do? What do you guys need help on? What can I take a look at? So,
yeah, absolutely. I think I actually did this math a couple of weeks ago. Only 28% of EM residencies have a fellowship tied to them. So obviously the majority don't. And I know some of them, city clustering certainly kind of skews that number a little bit. But it's, if you want to do pretty much any place that has a fellowship, would be more than happy to take on somebody as an elective. Most programs, I guess, have your electives in your second or your next to last year. And it just, you'll need some lead time, because paperwork is paperwork, and there'll need to be PLAs and some other things done. But I think any of us would be happy to take folks that don't have that experience. And even if you make it through residency and you just know you want to do it, but you never got the chance to really experience it, that's okay too. That's what the interview process is about, and finding out about you and what your interests are and those kind of things. Any other thoughts on that? Or we'll go to the next one. So this one's we touched on how to boost an application for EMS. It says booster, but I think it means boost. Who wants that one? Okay, fine. I don't think there's necessarily anything you have to do specifically. I mean, what I would look for in candidates is somebody who has an interest and a desire and who wants to do the work. It's often a little bit making sure they understand what it is. And I guess that would be one thing, maybe, that, at least have an understanding of what they think EMS is, and we can shape the rest. If you have an opportunity to do, or if you have a rotation at your home spot, obviously you need to do that. If you have an opportunity for some elective experience or something, that's great too. But I personally don't look for anything hugely detailed in applicants other than some sort of desire and an interest in it. Dr. Pepe, who has joined us from, I think, Florida now, right?
Let's see, I'm in Dallas today, so I just
There I had a
wrong
50
hat.
chance.
I'll put my other hat on. Hey, but maybe I misunderstood the question. Was it how do you boost? What was it again? What was the question again?
Says how to boost an application for EMS. So I'm assuming that's the CV letter, all that your experience to get.
Oh,
That's how I interpreted it. I don't know if others have interpreted it differently.
As opposed to us selling it, the person applying it. Okay, got it. And a suggestion I have on that is that it's that you show that you have some interest well beyond just a 911 call run, that kind of thing. That it's for example, whether it's mass gathering medicine, disaster medicine, or even tactical aspects of it too, assuming your program is able to provide that. But I think that if you show interest beyond just the regular, run of the mill, I'm going to go do 911 calls and learn how to be a medical director might be a tactic, I think, as long as it's being genuine and it's not, because we can read right through people who are just BSing us.
Yeah. By the way, I see a couple of names I recognize that are probably with programs too. So if you're faculty from programs, feel free to pop on the screen and share your insight as well. But any other thoughts on anything about applications specifically?
But I really liked what you're saying is absolutely right. You're looking for someone who has a good work ethic, period. It's going to show up, right? So that's the biggest problem I've had if I've had problems with fellows in the past, it's the people who didn't have the work ethic.
Yeah. I tell fellows all the time, it's you should never, literally or even philosophically violate work rules, but you're going to have a busy year. It should be a fun year. But it's not, if you've war stories of those of us that did it while back, sometimes they were pretty varied workloads, depending on your system, or it was very, very niche-y. My fellowship was very public health driven. So I knew lots about public health, but not necessarily learned all the grades about everything else in the first year or so, at least. But yeah, it's going to be a busy year, but it's going to be a fun year. And we do expect the work, to do the work, but it's not too hard. Okay. Next question, a little change of pace, is how to get involved in national EMS organizations. So you're here, so that's a start. I think I was actually, Dr. Pepe and I were just discussing this earlier today on a somewhat related topic. We live in the academic part of this, we live in about 3.5 different national organizations. So obviously SAAM is the academic organization of emergency medicine and all the great things they do in the conferences and everything. And we have the interest group with involvement there. Obviously you've got varying degrees of EMS involvement at ACEP, both at a committee and a section, and then some of that through EMRA, which obviously works very closely with SAM as well. I think most of the faculty on this call probably in a lot of ways primarily live in NAMSP, so the National Association of EMS Physicians and the Council of EMS Fellowship Directors, which I guess disclosure, I'm the chair of that too. So I'm either Switzerland or a spy everywhere. I don't know which is the choice. But anyway, you can get involved in all those. I know resident student, dues are pretty low everywhere. And it really, a lot of it about EMS is like kind of alluding to what I just said, showing up and participating. We're a pretty altruistic group. We don't really look too much about hierarchies, and we want people to get involved and come up with new, fresh ideas. So I think those are the primary physician driven ones. There's obviously the National Association of EMTs, there's National Association of Fire Chiefs. It goes on and on, because EMS, if you don't realize, has tentacles in all sorts of things, from public health to obviously standard 911 care to all the things that were just mentioned about the kind of our subspecialties. Other thoughts on that, or other ways people can get involved, you guys think?
I think just showing up to kind of committee meetings and interest groups, you will find lots of people will show up, and then there's always work to be done. And don't sign up for every project because we're busy and that's impossible. Just pick one and then show up to those subcommittee meetings, and eventually more and more things will come your way, and you get active and you meet more people and kind of find some mentors and sponsors through that route as well.
Yeah, and I think attendance at certain meetings, even things that, part of the problem is the financing of it and getting away, but even meetings that are, let's say, non-academic per se, like EMS World or some of those others, are actually interesting because you meet some really interesting people and even thought leaders that are not necessarily physician, or faculty types as well. But so, I mean, there's all sorts of meetings that could go on that you can actually, as you sit in and listen to some of these things that are EMS oriented, you'll learn a lot. And
Yeah,
you'll meet people, right? So
I was going to say that's a big part of it. Even if, as residents or students, if you have some opportunities to go to even, local EMS meetings, regional meetings, state level stuff, that we all, it's a surprisingly, it's a big, we're all over the country, but it's a relatively small world. I think, we broke our record at NAMSP this year, and I think we had 15 or 1600 people, right? Compare that to SAM and certainly like ASEP. So it's not, we all know each other, but we all got to know each other by varying degrees of either committee work or just getting involved and coming up with ideas and finding those niche. Like you alluded to, it's very easy to want to do everything. So you do have to triage things a little bit, but also understand you'll wake up one day and suddenly realize you're doing a bunch of cool stuff and you didn't even know how you got there. All right. What's next? Now, how to create an elective in tribal EMS. Other than you can create an elective of anything, I don't have specific thoughts on that. Anybody else have some thoughts or ideas about that specific, or just talk about electives in general?
Tell you what, can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it was about how to get involved, how to create an elective in tribal EMS.
I think you make up your own curriculum base. You do your homework, you find out what the things are, you present it to me as the fellowship director, and I say, that's really interesting. And you make sure it's okay and there's not any, aspects. But I think I don't think there's anything out there that's designed for that, that's sitting there or is available to create it. And then again, remember, curricula always have to be what are you going to learn? How are you going to learn it? And is there research involved in that, which you can propose, that kind of thing. So I don't know if anybody has a template for that right now. What do you think? Anybody else on the phone know about that, or on the Zoom, or whatever? Is this a Zoom? Yeah, it's a Zoom.
I don't think that there is a formal tribal EMS program out there, but I mean, if you're looking at anything that's related to like a federal healthcare, a federal program, the National Park Service actually might have some. I don't know if there's overlap but there are plenty of us that are actually involved in national park services. A lot of the EMS physicians around the nation are also local emergency medicine advisors for national parks all around the nation. And that might actually be a really good way to get your feet wet in something that's similar, but like on a more federal level.
Yeah, I was almost going to suggest the same thing. So that's great. But I just, to begin with, because I don't think there's any template I know that's ever done this. If you came to me as a fellow and said, I'd like to do this, or a pre-fellow, whatever, applying for it. I said, well, design me the protocol and to see what you did and what's the context. And if they do the homework, and then I'd actually like that, because it's going to be something creative and it means you're doing the right thing and you're doing EMS service. So I don't know if anybody to add to that, but that's, I think you're on the right track.
We do have an elective related question in the chat.
Right.
Is there a formal away election process, or is it more so just cold calling or cold emailing places to see if they would take you for an elective?
I think as far as electives go, it can be as far as electives go, a lot of EMS programs are very flexible in helping seek out those elective opportunities. I do want to point out, though, it's a year-long fellowship, right? And it's a very busy year, and you also have core experiences that you have to meet. But a lot of programs are flexible to helping in arrangement of electives. There's also the legality of it, though, that kind of muddies the water in trying to get the GME office and legal to agree to some of the away electives.
Yeah, I agree. I spend a lot of time telling candidates my job is to train you with everything for the year to pass the boards and then take your first job and not know what to do with your first job, because we have to build this foundation from a fellowship standpoint. I agree. I think it might have been directed more as a resident. If you're from somewhere like an orphan program, you don't have an EMS fellowship and you're trying to do it away somewhere like at a residency that has one, it's a similar process. You just need lead time. Again, most programs are going to be accepting of away rotations. And if you're coming from obviously an accredited school and you're going to an accredited school, there's going to be with program letter of agreement. That's what it's called. They're going to have to do the paperwork between the two schools to say you're covered when you're here versus there. And there can sometimes, depending on the EMS system, be a little bit of nuances to that on whether how much you'll be able to do or treat in the field, et cetera. But if you're, if you're looking to do one for next year, for example, or later this year, you probably need to get started pretty quick. There is no formal system. It would be a couple avenues, would either be through this group to reach out for interest through the NAMSP Council of Fellowship Directors to reach out, or theoretically, I suppose, through different listservs of finding the different programs. And if it's an area you are interested in potentially going to for fellowship, I think that would obviously be your focus. Texas has we got 5 or 6 programs. There's programs all over the country. So pick an area and see who can get the paperwork sorted out.
And Craig, one thing though, more fundamental is that how's it going to get paid for? So that's the thing I've always come across. And I've done a unique training, like they're going to go off and do, I don't know, this or that, or they're going to do an event medicine thing, or they're going to go rotate with Secret Service or whatever it might be, that I would say, that sounds cool. Let's do that for that month, like an elective. But then who's going to pay for the housing for you? Who's going to be, the travel there? So usually the travel is a little easier, but if you're paying for somebody for a month, their livelihood, that's kind of an issue that has to be tackled as well. So
yeah, the funding will be, I don't want to speak for all programs. It'd be unlikely that I would house a visiting resident, et cetera,
Correct.
budget. But oftentimes I know the residencies have that built in, and to get it approved, that's part of the budgeting process. Or some people will, if they have got somebody that can crash at their place, those kind of things to minimize the cost. So you're right. There are a lot of, it can sound a little daunting. It's not, but it does take some time and some forethought.
Yeah, in the past, I've seen usually residencies, there's a APD or someone whose role is to help with electives, and there's lots of paperwork. And since it's GME paying your salary and stuff, where I train, if you were going to do global health or away rotation, you had to somehow prove you would bring back some knowledge to share with the program to get our GME to buy in and help continue your salary and insurance and all that. I think the big takeaway is find who that point person is at your program and give it a lot of time in advance to set that up.
And I can't overstate beyond the funds is that exactly what Craig was thinking about right away was all these things about agreement about, because we have a tough enough time sometimes with PLAs in terms of the local, whatever service you're going with or going to be serving, whether it's out in the tribal area or whether you're going to go to some federal thing or whatever it may be. The whole issue is that are you allowed to do that in terms of their own internal malpractice or liability issues, et cetera, let alone yours on our end, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like I said, don't be discouraged, but we like to joke that it only takes a minute if you wait till the last one, but this is not one of those things you can do that with. So, all right, next one out here, a little bit of what to look for in an EMS fellowship. So this is when we can all tell everybody how each of our fellowships are amazing. So who wants to go first?
Well, I will say that each of us think our fellowship is the best because everyone here is the ones who designed our programs, and every single program is unique in its geography and resources. And, all of us have done our best to make it the best. And the best place for you is where you fit in, where are you going to be happy and where you're going to get the best education and experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Similar to residency, we all have the same fundamental requirements, right? We all have to give 150 hours or whatever it is of the core content. We all have to do the experiences, and everybody does it a little differently. Sometimes that's based on choice, to be perfectly frank, in EMS. Sometimes that's limited by whatever your system is going to allow you to do. So like response vehicle versus not response vehicle, all these kind of things, some of that is going to be what you are looking for and what you're interested in. But at the end of the day, I think, there's not that many of our programs and everybody's held to that same standard. So you're going to get that good education. And again, you're going to get that broad fundamental education that you're going to take for the rest of your career, and then find out 5 years down the line, wow, I'm doing something I never even did in fellowship because this is just where my career went. But I think you want that broad base, you want some varied experience. If it's a fire-based system that like we are, that's great, but hopefully they have some rotations or some experience with non-fire-based. Not an absolute, but trying to at least get exposure to the different systems, because you never know exactly where you're going to end up. But somebody else want other thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I would just say that, looking at variety is key, right? So you want to take away from your fellowship things that you didn't think that you would be doing, right? So you want to experience those facets of EMS that you really didn't know existed. So, wilderness EMS, tactical EMS is like prime examples there. But you want to go to a program that's going to train you to like be dropped anywhere in the United States and function as an EMS physician. You're going to be a-okay. Plus, like whatever is going to be a great fit for you, whatever is going to be satisfying your career goals.
And the spinoff from what Jeremy is saying is I also look at I recommend people that are looking at programs. Let's say if one of my residents and we're not going to take them, we've already got our people or whatever, they want to go somewhere else. So I might say, well, look at the faculty they have and see if there's diversity. What do they do? Because some of our EMS people may have experience in toxicology or they help out with our program and they're really good at it, whatever. So I would also look at who your mentors are going to be there. That's an important thing. And that helped me for all the reasons you said. And does the program, if you're interested in tactical medicine, does the program have that component to it? If you're interested in sports medicine, does it have that component to it? So it does go down, but most people don't know what they want, but it sounds kind of cool right now. But that's kind of, as I always look and see who the faculty are and how that's organized and what kind of specialty areas they have. That's how we sell it too. So.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo some of those comments in that it really, at the end of the day, will come down to an individual fit. I think there's a lot of excellent EMS fellowship programs out there that, we all have our requirements, as was already mentioned, to, ACGME requirements of components that we have to teach, but you'll have to decide, what is the best fit for me. And those are probably some things to think about before you interview in terms of what kind of things am I looking for? Am I looking for, a large faculty? Am I looking for a very broad experience where I get a taste of everything, or an adequate taste of everything from air to ground to traditional fire base to private? Is there something specific I'm looking for, that they're particularly strong in? And at the end of the day, will I be able to get an EMS job?
The life of an EMS physician. Mike, you want to talk about that question in the chat?
So I think just leading off that question, given that the interview process is mostly virtual, are there any specific suggestions you all as fellowship program directors would have for applicants, sort of how to, what to look out for on the virtual interview process, how to know, an applicant is really being looked at versus churning and burning through applications, and how to really test something's a good fit virtually?
I really look at letters of recommendation. I know you're probably supposed to get on average about 3 or 4, depending on the program requirements when you apply. But and I kind of try to get a feel of what they're saying about the candidate and if they really have interacted with them, or it was just like, oh yeah, we're kind of ships passing because of clinical shifts or something like that. One of the things is that the EMS community is still a fairly small community overall, and it's a good thing that we all know each other, and it's good and bad, but it's I think there's a lot more good, and I think one of the things is that after getting to know some people really well, you'll start to see maybe in their letters that you'll start to see some nuances. You'll be like, oh, okay, they really knew this person, or they're just kind of trying to be civil and trying to be polite. But more often than not, I see a lot of just glowing recommendations. So, but it's just a really good way to kind of just differentiate some of the really top candidates.
Yeah, we talking about that question about after the match is done, or do we go to? I'm sorry, I got a call.
No, we're just talking about how to essentially determine good fit via virtual interviews.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. That's this year. Oh, I guess I'll say on that. I think there's going to be some programs that are going to be just virtual this year. Some will be some sort. I think you may have several that do some sort of option either way. I think most of us as program directors are biased toward wanting in person because we want to meet you. We want to show off our toys. We want to, you know, get Zoom. We're called tired of Zoom, even though it serves purposes for things like this, obviously. But that being said, other programs may be more restricted on their GME office because some of the official guidance coming down, I think, still pushes toward virtual, but I think different schools are taking those at different discretions. I don't want anybody, you know, if you find a program that say, hey, you can either come in person or virtual, you do what you need to do what's right for you. I don't think any of the, I would hope none of the programs are going to be particularly biased or anything if folks can't come. We understand, and you have a good virtual interview, go out for a second look. Those kind of things are obviously something that's up to you. There have been, and I don't see this trend suddenly changing, more spots than people. So this isn't like emergency medicine where you had to apply for I don't know how many programs and do I don't know how many interviews. You don't really probably need, and other folks chime in if disagree, you know, 5, 6 interviews. It's up to you. If you get a couple more, you certainly shouldn't have to travel, because worst case, somehow the math doesn't fall your way. There's going to be programs, they're going to be great programs that are going to have spots open that you can obviously do the, I don't know if they call it scramble anymore, but whatever they call it, you can obviously find a spot. So I don't think you need to be too stressed about that part of it from the virtual side. I don't know, any other thoughts?
Yeah. Also, to just virtual side. So, you know, some GME offices are now status post the height of our pandemic. The pandemic's not over, right? So the height of our pandemic, that for equity reasons, virtual interviews are not going away. Our program is like that as well too. So it is tough. I think that, you know, talking to either the current fellow or recent graduates of the program is super important to you as an applicant to kind of gain some flavor and substance of, you know, what the program is all about. But it's definitely tough. There's no easy way to go about it, as we're all learning in our virtual world currently. I was going to say something else, but I forget. So I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I would say virtual or in person. Obviously we all prefer to be in person, but one of the biggest things is talking to, I would actually say recent graduates, because they're the ones who actually experience the program. The current fellows, you know, they just scrambled to get their abstracts submitted, and they have not had a true experience of the fellowship. And honestly, I feel like most of the fellows don't really get into a groove until after the first quarter. I don't know if the other faculty would agree with me, because like it's just like we told you to do how to do this 3 times and you're still not doing it right. But it's a big change. It's not like show up for your ER shift, work 8 hours, go home. It's welcome to fellowship, and here's your new life. You know, here's how you triage your phone. Here's how you triage your email.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously, I'm sure a lot of us have our fellows available for interview days at some form or fashion in an open discussion. They'll tell you at the very least that, you know, whether or not they were lied to, I suppose, and how they feel after the first couple of months. But yeah, those recent graduates and you obviously, you know, ask the program, you know, for contacts or those kind of things. Most of the graduates are more than happy to reach out and those kind of things. So what other thoughts about the interview process? Then I was going to answer that one about after the match.
No, the other thing is actually try to learn a little bit about Zoom, like for example, making eye contact by looking at the green light, you know, that kind of thing. And just there's a lot of subtleties of doing Zoom well, and that helps you come across with better body language and all that kind of thing. So, and you know, just like we would if we were in that little extra room that we got to sit in as we rotated people through, right? So,
exactly. There was a question in the chat about after the match is done, what are some things you recommend prospective fellows to do to hit the ground running in fellowship? What kind of prep work is most helpful? So as somebody selfish from the state of Texas who loves to delay licensing, please get started on your licensing stuff immediately after. You will get, you know, a phone call from the program director or something within the first couple of days, says congratulations, and then you will immediately get an email from the program coordinator that says here's all the stuff we need. Because credentialing is, so, you know, if you've already been moonlighting, you should have some of this paperwork already set up. If you haven't, it's time to start doing all these things. You're going to need to get a license, typically unrestricted in each state. So there will be a little bit of a financial thing there to prepare for, but credentialing just takes forever. I don't think I've had a year yet that there wasn't at least a couple day delay getting a fellow off the ground because of some of this is silly ACGME, CMS, Medicare stuff, but some of it is just the practical reality. It's a lot of work.
Okay, Dr. Cooley, does everything have to go through the match, or can people make a contract with someone off match a year ahead of time? That's kind of a good question for people.
Yeah, so we are not an all-in specialty. So a lot of programs, most programs I think are in the match now because we figured out it's the more equitable, easier, better way to do things. It's interesting, those of us that have been around long enough for the council meeting, we were only going to talk about the match discussion every other year, and every year it came up 4 years in a row because we used to have this weird agreement that sort of was like a match, but it really wasn't. And the final thing that pushed us over the edge was the candidates, the residents said, the current fellows and immediate former fellows said, we wish there'd been a match. We would have preferred that. So we are in the match. That being said, in certain situations, programs are allowed to take a spot out of the match, or if they have more than one spot, they may be doing that because they have that internal lock candidate, and that's fine, or there's some unique situations. But for the most part, I think most of the programs are in the match. And I tend to, even my internal candidates, the last couple of years, I've politely asked them to go through the match.
Yeah.
Busy day. Keep going on.
I want to throw it, but it's still the bottom line is no matter whether you're outside, inside, is that the day you know where you're going, you're calling if you haven't already gone to the board of managers of the place that you were looking at, or the board of medical examiners, or whatever, you really have to start all that stuff like as soon as possible. Some of them are so delayed. He's on a call right now, so I'm going to go on a little bit. But some of the states are so far behind. I just applied for a license because I have to do a job in the state of Nevada, and it took 6 months. And I mean, I should have been real easy, in a lot of ways. And so, in any event, it takes a while, and we need you to have those credentials on board. So that's a key thing.
Yeah, and go ahead and start a Dropbox or a box with all your diplomas and all those things that typically getting hospital credentials needs, because you're going to probably have to do it again in the near future after fellowship. And if you moonlight during residency, you're going to have the contact of all those people at every hospital, because basically every hospital you work at, for new credentialing, they have to reach out to the other hospitals to make sure you're a good person. So go ahead and start that file, make it somewhere easy to access. That way it just becomes easier and easier as we go forward.
And some states, depending on where you're going to go, are literally want a lot of the stuff, the originals or notarized stuff, or it's amazing how painful it is, the stuff you have to get. It may be a little easier nowadays. Unfortunately, I had to go back into the 1970s, when and have actual documents and have letters from the medical school or letters from the from the residency program, and if they're still around, by the way, to some of the people that were there. So anyway, so that I couldn't say even before if you think you know where you might be going or could be going, make sure you've checked out all the state medical board rules, and also maybe even get a sense of what you need to be credentialed at a particular place, just like you said. Is there anything else besides credentialing and medical licensing? What else would we be thinking about?
One thing that I think in addition to like credentialing and all that other fun, dry stuff that we're all required to do. Another thing I'd also suggest is 1 year in EMS fellowship goes really, really fast. And it's almost sometimes extremely difficult to be able to do a research project or like a scholarly activity within that time, because it's just EMS encompasses so many vast topics. If you have something that you're extremely interested in, first of all, that makes you like really stand out too. But if you are already like potentially even working on something that you think you can bring to the table, that might be worth like discussing ahead of time with the program directors or, some of the faculty members that at the place that you matched at ahead of time, to be like, hey, by the way, I have this project or I have an idea. Is this something that we can work with? What can I get started? Even a lit review will take like weeks of time, and those are weeks that you can bring back, and you could be doing ride-alongs, you could be getting other certifications, you can be learning something else in EMS fellowship. So might be worth thinking about.
Greg, do you want to re-echo and reinforce what Esther's just saying in terms of like when's the abstract for NAMSP due, right?
Oh yeah, the bane of all of our fellowships' existence. Don't tell research committee. So the abstract the NAMSP deadline is unfortunately August, usually the first week of August. So there's always a kind of a mad scramble. That being said, the SAEM deadline is much later in the year. So I know several programs actually choose to present there for the fellows, and we do a little bit of both. So but if we know, so if there is something coming in, like you have this interest or desire to kind of hit the ground running, that kind of accelerates the process. The practical reality of it is I think as you found out in residency, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on, and it's always great and noble to want to get a huge head start, but a lot of this is trying to just get wrapped up and get the bare minimum done. So, but anything you can do to kind of get a little bit of a jump start certainly would help, and otherwise just get all those annoying credentialing paperwork and things done.
I really like what you said, though, Esther. I think that's a great plan overall. So,
yeah. Anything else on that one? What's our next question we got in the chat there, Mike?
What tips would you recommend for job hunting for after fellowship? And are there good resources for positions open or how to obtain an EMS job?
You definitely want to start job hunting during fellowship, not wait till after fellowship. There's medical director positions out there, no doubt about it. There is some restriction on medical director opportunities depending on the location you want to end up. If you are dead set on a location you want to end up once you're done with fellowship, it's helpful to let your fellowship leadership know sooner than later so that we can help you find those opportunities. Regarding after fellowship, even if like you end up at a location that there's not any real local EMS medical director opportunities out there, there's always tons at the state level, and there's always tons at the national level. And you just have to show up to those state and national meetings.
Yeah, I was going to say there are only so many full-time big city medical director jobs out there, right? I think most of us in some form or fashion in our career, and even maybe to this day in our academic roles, have cobbled together kind of EMS with other stuff. There are some, but there aren't too many that don't still work at least a reasonable percentage of EM, because we all hopefully enjoy that too. That's what we got into this in the first place. And I think one thing that maybe residents don't necessarily realize is that we always say the word medical director, be an EMS medical director. And that's definitely there's still tons of those out there, but as growing as a subspecialty and what's happening with the modern world in medicine and some things even during COVID that kind of highlighted this, there's going to be a need for just EMS physicians. So, people in the streets, docs in the streets, sometimes doing the really cool, shiny stuff, and sometimes doing the really not shiny, but amazingly rewarding stuff of navigating folks for challenges of those that are unhoused or others, or trying to figure out how to help assist them. And so just like when you work an ER job, there's a director of the ER, and then there's a lot of folks that do emergency medicine along with other little niche-y things they like to do. There's going to be roles in the future that will be supported funding for different avenues of EMS physicians. So I think your first job out may not be as EMS heavy as you might thought it would have been, but those are also the kind of jobs where you wake up one day and suddenly they hand you the key. When you weren't paying attention, you got the key to the whole place for EMS, and now you got new challenges because things change. And being present, a lot of places don't have still real active EMS physicians or EMS medical directors, and so you go to one of those places as the up and comer and the one who's doing all the stuff, going to all the meetings, all that kind of stuff. And someday you can build yourself a nice, empire, I guess, for lack of a better word. Other thoughts on that, or job hunting? It's been a while for me. So
some other good places are kind of your faculty, but also the alumni of the program, because they're probably kind of all around the country. I also looked a lot on NAEMSP has a job board, SAEM has a job board, ASAP has a job board, and there's a mix of both community and academic jobs. And I still look at those just so I know what's out there for the future fellows that we train. And you can take a look, you can see who's hiring. I've been finding both community and academic, lots of places are kind of building up their EMS divisions. So the jobs are out there.
I was going to say, James, where do you think you're looking? Where do you think you're going?
I love my job.
The thing also is that as a chair, when I'm hiring people, you're going to go the academic route. I always like to see if someone has additional, credentials or whatever it is on top of whatever, if it's a PhD or whatever, if they did a fellowship in whatever it may be. that is, if I have to choose between a couple of people, that tends to help me out. So if you're looking for that, that would be, that's one thing to keep in mind. That's something that helps you on that route. But on a more global level, I want to go back a little bit to what Craig was referring to, that you will not get into a major job, but maybe in some of those larger cities where they need more help, you might be able to get a role, as an assistant medical director. And that's what I'm saying. You should get yourself in a mindset that you may end up first sort of going through a kind of a true apprenticeship, because you've only been doing this for a year in a sense, in a full-time position, and to get that kind of thing. And then what happens is the people who are there will see, wow, this guy's really good. And then you end up being in really high level positions because later, because you demonstrated things and you were a go-getter, in within those systems in the secondary role.
There really has been a shift in a lot of the big cities to add on, to create this kind of concept of either a chief medical officer or the office of the medical director. Like here in San Antonio, when I came here 10 years ago, there were 2, and then I sort of cobbled together that there were 2, and then if they couldn't take call, it went to the ER or at the university, which the ER docs didn't really like taking the phone because they didn't really understand what EMS was doing. The EMS medics didn't really like having to talk to them, and I said, hey, worth, pay me for that. I'll take the third halftime or quarter time or whatever it was. And then, but now there's 3 full-time medical directors. I'm a half. There's all the associates. So these programs are growing because everybody has so many different roles because there's so many things to do. So yeah, it's, probably not going to have a be quote unquote medical director on your business card the very first job. But you certainly can get yourself into some systems and even create some opportunities for yourself to really kind of grow your career and have a rewarding opportunities.
Quite frankly, you may not want to be the lead person up front because they deal with a lot of politics when you could be doing the real down at the chief operating officer, so to speak, and develop those skills. And I think that's exactly right as it goes along. By the way, as an FYI, recently when we applied for various jobs, we do it as a medical direction team with the chief medical officer, same kind of model you're talking about, Craig. And that has been very useful. So coming in and being part of a team like that is a really good start. Because for the reason you said, if someone's telling you their wife is in a car wreck and they can't be there for you, or they're on vacation or whatever, we did that purposely to say we have redundancy in the system, and it's been fantastic for the junior people because they've really progressed fast as a result.
Yeah. Other thoughts or ideas? I've got a couple more of the questions that were sent in, and maybe 1 or 2 in the chat. We got a few minutes left.
Okay.
So we've already talked about kind of what to look for in an EMS fellowship. This is the kind of the opposite of that coin. Is any red flags to look for in an EMS fellowship? And I don't know. I'll open that to others. There's not, because we're all accredited. And there's not as many of us. I know there's a little in the world of emergency medicine right now because of the rapid growth and stuff. I think there is some things that people talk about looking for. I don't think, the only thing I would say, if you interview at a particular program and have a weird vibe about it, you probably should listen to your gut. Doesn't mean it's a bad program. It just might not be right for you. Other than that, I don't know what other people's thoughts are. Red flags or things maybe in their days they were worried about. There you go.
Okay. It could be like that parachute commercial. They say, is the parachute going to work? And they go, oh yeah, it should work, So yeah, that might be a red flag where would I be able to do this or that, and they go, oh, well, yeah, we can look into that. So I'd rather have people who can not ever promise anything they can't deliver on. And that's to me is a red flag.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything else other than, like I said, if you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, even if it seems silly, you should listen to your gut, so to speak. Mike, is there anything else in the chat I may have overlooked?
Not that I see, no.
Okay.
Oh,
there we go. What should you look for when considering a brand new program? I don't know, anybody on the call from really new programs that they can talk to this about how awesome it was to start a program?
My name is Graham Brantswatsky. I'm sorry, I've been listening on shift. I'm the new program director for Utah. We're a relatively new program.
Perfect.
I think we're in our 4th year, but I was around from the beginning. Definitely has its challenges, but also incredible in terms of the opportunities, because you can really create the experience you want, the legacy you want. And so we've had a really fun time with it, creating our program. And and kind of deciding as we go and really listening to the fellows and getting the feedback to develop it from their perspective up.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think if you're as a candidate for a new program, I guess maybe the questions you might think about asking is kind of what is their structure for the academic portion and who's kind of teaching that, just to kind of make sure that again fits to you. Obviously, a lot of the programs, whether they're new or old, have 1 or 2 fellows, so things can be sometimes casual in that sense of how we get together and do things. Other programs may be much more structured formally, just be either because of size or the logistics of things. So those kind of simple questions that to help you, what's your learning style like? I think maybe one thing I would say, because I know this from when we were a new program, and to some would argue we still do this, expect things to change. The EMS in general always evolves and changes, new either opportunities or challenges, and a new program, may be a little more flexible. It might be, if there's something that they say they're going to have when it starts, be aware that maybe it won't quite make it because things take time, and how important is that piece to it. But 4 years is probably mid pack. I think we've only been around 10, and so that's halfway there. So not all of us are still figuring this out a little bit along the way. But I think those would be just, again, what are you looking for? What questions you have from a program, and does it seem to fit from what they're telling you? And do you get, consistent answers across, 3 or 4 people you interview with?
So one of the things I think you have an advantage in your new program is just think about the depth of the faculty that you have there and their experience. So if you're, one of the things I look at is that are there veteran people who have been doing this a long time and really know what they're doing? And you certainly have that, in Utah. So so that would be helpful. Whereas if everybody's a bunch of rookies and haven't been doing this, then I may be, as an individual, I might, but again, if it fits and it's the place you want to go to, you'll, in a lot of respects, you're going to make the program yourself, no matter what, in terms of your interaction with EMS crews and so on, and your own going out to the dispatch centers or whatever it may be that you're doing. So I think you should do okay overall, especially if it's an accredited program.
All right. We obviously, if something last minute questions pop up, feel free to put that in the chat, or put your little hand up on the Zoom. But we didn't talk about this technically at the beginning. I assume anybody who's in their current year to apply, if the 3rd or 4th year, kind of knows this, but we are right in application should be hitting our doors pretty quick, because interview season for us at least is going to start sometime in early September. I'm assuming that's pretty similar for everybody else through October. Your rank list is due. Does anybody know the date off the top of their head? I think it's the end of October, and the match is sometime early November. So it's it's time to, and if you're curious about a program, or you want to apply to a program but you don't have your letters quite done yet, or your recommendation letters, go ahead and reach out to the program, let them know, make contact, and then, we can go from there. We'll obviously look for the letters and all that kind of stuff, moving on. And then we do have one more quick question. Let's see here. How much stake should one take in location for post-fellowship jobs? I've heard some recommended looking for programs near their desired future work areas. Maybe a quick word on your fellows venture off to. So there's a couple schools of thought on fellowships, right? If you have one where you are, you don't have to move, and you can stay 1 more year. Or if you're going to go off to the world, the idea of picking one that you like, hopefully, that's relatively near where you think you might end up, again, cuts down on a move. But other than that, I think it's just finding the place you're going to be happy with for a year, and then it's going to, who knows how it's going to turn out. Fellows, my program, we've got 2 or 3 that have stayed on within our department or within town. We've got some on the West Coast, some on the East Coast. People kind of go wherever they're going to go, either because that's where they want to be eventually, or they discover that, or they come up with a significant other that wants to go there, all sorts of reasons. So I wouldn't let yourself be too terribly geographic locked on a fellowship, unless, especially if you don't feel comfortable in that fellowship. Other ideas on geography, or any other thoughts on that?
Geography might not be the best way to go, but the experiences, right? Because this is 1 year. This is the last year of your education, and then you can bring that to where you want to go as well. We have graduates all over one of our graduates is in Japan practicing. So Like, and one of my graduates, you know, he planned on moving out to the West Coast, and now he's across the river because he met a girl and he,
Right.
Well, actually, and last month, I know there was another webinar that talked about some of these same topics. And I know one of the faculty commented about the fact that if you do have EMS experience or you've been in kind of a single system forever, this might be the time to go somewhere else.
Right.
To see something else, to experience something else, and you know, to kind of spread your wings a little bit, even though you'd be very comfortable staying, because again, every EMS system is different, and the more you kind of understand that, the better off you'll be.
I think echoing off what Craig just said too, I literally assumed that I was going to be in Michigan for the rest of my life, and I had my entire 20-year plan already planned out by the time I graduated residency.
Involved a snowblower, right?
Well, that and the pandemic.
Yeah.
I had to sell that. But you know, coming out as like a pandemic, a graduate that finished fellowship in the middle of the pandemic, like the peak of it, I mean, things can change. And I mean, obviously, you know, applying to somewhere like Emory, for instance, really wasn't like, it was, you know, I'm coming from Michigan. It was unexpected, but I had to learn from Alex Isaacoff. I mean, you know, but like, you know, look at the programs. It's like what Navin said, it's a year. It's an experience, you know, and personal experience. Like, you know, I'm married. My husband and I decided to do the long distance thing for a full year because we wanted to see how this panned out, and it actually worked out for the better. So you never know what your future holds.
Absolutely. All right, we've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to close on this. Everybody on this call, particularly all the residents and students, this group is yours. So I'm your chair for the next year. I've done this. This is my second year. I don't plan for the triumvirate there. So I would like what I want is for us, this group, to grow and to come up with new ideas and new things to talk about. So please put things on the chat on ideas, questions, so we can start a conversation there. Reach out to me personally with any ideas, thoughts. I will plan to have some sort of virtual meeting in the next probably couple of weeks, because I want us to start brainstorming ideas that we should submit to SAM for next year's conference. I'm selfishly going to say they don't do enough EMS at SAM, and that's probably at least partially our fault because we don't give them enough of the amazing talks I know we all have, or ideas we have, to kind of bend that curve a little bit. So in the meantime, though, I want to thank everybody for joining. And again, if you come up with a great question 20 minutes from now, put it in the IG listserv or reach out to any of us. We're happy to answer it. And everybody applying this year, good luck. We'll see you around. Those that are coming down in a couple of years, we'll look forward to seeing you then. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thanks again, Craig. Thanks for doing a great job. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Everybody have a great night.